My closest friend agreed to be my bridesmaid, but her eyes avoid mine whenever my fiancé enters the room. I sense she's hiding something about him. The silence between us grows heavier each day, and I wonder if she's protecting me or betraying me. The sound of my fiancé's voice filled the room, warm and confident, but it was her reaction that froze me. My closest friend, the one who had promised to stand beside me on my wedding day, suddenly stiffened. Her eyes darted away from mine, her smile faltered, and she gripped her phone so tightly I thought it might crack. It wasn't the first time I had noticed, but that moment struck me harder than all the others. I forced myself to laugh at his joke, pretending not to notice her discomfort, but inside I was unraveling. Why did she always look away when he entered? Why did her laughter sound hollow, as though she was covering something? My joy at having her as my bridesmaid was beginning to feel tainted, shadowed by questions I couldn't answer. The small incidents piled up like stones in my chest. She excused herself from gatherings the moment he arrived, claiming sudden headaches or urgent calls. At one dinner, she dropped her fork when he leaned closer to speak, her hands trembling as she muttered something about being clumsy. I tried to brush it off, but the unease grew heavier each time. Family dinners became unbearable. I would sit between them, watching her silence stretch across the table like a wall. She avoided my gaze, staring at her plate, nodding politely when spoken to but never engaging. My relatives noticed too. My aunt whispered once, "She seems distant." I smiled weakly, pretending it was nothing, but inside I was drowning in suspicion. One evening I couldn't hold back anymore. I found her in the kitchen, her hands busy with dishes, her face pale under the dim light. "Are you all right?" I asked softly. She nodded too quickly, her voice shaky. "Just stress. Work has been overwhelming." But her hands betrayed her, trembling, restless, unable to stay still. I wanted to believe her, but the lie was too thin. The silence between us grew heavier each day. I replayed every moment in my mind, searching for clues. Was she protecting me from something? Or was she hiding her own betrayal? My heart wrestled with both possibilities, torn between trust and suspicion. One afternoon I invited her for coffee, hoping to break the tension. She arrived late, her hair disheveled, her smile forced. As we sat across from each other I tried to lighten the mood. "You've been so quiet lately," I said gently. She stirred her drink, avoiding my eyes. "I'm fine," she whispered. But the way she bit her lip, the way her shoulders slumped, told me otherwise. At another gathering, my fiancé placed his hand on my shoulder and I caught her staring, her eyes wide, her lips pressed tightly together. She looked away instantly, fumbling with her phone. My chest tightened. Was it jealousy, fear, or guilt? The tension seeped into my dreams. I would wake at night, heart racing, imagining conversations that never happened. I saw her whispering to him, saw them exchanging glances, saw secrets unfolding behind my back. Each morning I told myself it was just imagination, but the unease never left. One small incident pushed me further. At a family barbecue she stood apart from everyone, her arms crossed, her gaze fixed on the ground. When my fiancé approached, she flinched, stepping back as though his presence burned her. I watched silently, my mind spinning. I tried again to reach her. "You can tell me anything," I said one evening, my voice trembling with desperation. She smiled faintly, shaking her head. "There's nothing to tell." But her eyes betrayed her, clouded, heavy, filled with something she refused to share. The distance between us became unbearable. We had once shared everything, secrets, laughter, tears. Now there was only silence. I felt betrayed by her silence, yet terrified of what it might mean. One night I sat alone in my room, staring at the bridesmaid dress hanging in the corner. It should have been a symbol of joy, of friendship, of celebration. Instead it felt like a reminder of the growing chasm between us. I wondered if she would even wear it, if she would stand beside me with sincerity, or if her silence would haunt me on the most important day of my life. The unease consumed me. Every glance, every pause, every nervous laugh became a clue in a puzzle I couldn't solve. I wanted to confront her, to demand the truth, but fear held me back. What if the truth shattered everything? At a family dinner, my fiancé raised a toast, his voice strong and cheerful. Everyone clapped, but I noticed her hands remained still, her eyes fixed on her glass. She didn't smile, didn't join in. My heart ached. Later that night, I found her sitting alone in the garden, her face hidden in shadows. I approached quietly, my voice soft. "You're not yourself," I said. She looked up, her eyes glistening though no tears fell. "I'm fine," she whispered again. But I knew she wasn't. The silence between us was no longer just silence. It was a barrier, a secret, a betrayal waiting to be revealed. I felt trapped between love and loyalty, between trust and suspicion. My closest friend was slipping away, and I didn't know if she was protecting me or betraying me. And so I waited, my heart heavy, my mind restless, knowing that the truth was hiding in her silence, and that sooner or later it would break through. Her silence had become unbearable, and I knew something was waiting to break. It happened one evening when I walked past the study door half open and heard voices inside. My fiancé's tone was low, sharp, almost threatening. My friend's reply was softer, trembling as though she was pleading. I froze, my hand hovering near the doorframe, my heart pounding so loudly I feared they would hear it. "She can't know," he said firmly. Her voice cracked. "But it's wrong. She deserves." The rest was muffled, swallowed by the closing of the door. I stood there, breathless, my chest tight. Those words weren't meant for me, but they had found me anyway. From that moment I began to watch them differently. I noticed how they avoided standing too close, yet their eyes betrayed them. Glances lingered longer than they should, heavy with meaning. At gatherings, she would excuse herself the moment he entered, but not before their eyes met in a silent exchange. It was subtle, but it was there, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. I started investigating quietly, moving through my days with a mask of calm while inside I was restless. I paid attention to details I had once overlooked. The way his phone buzzed late at night, the way she seemed to know things he hadn't told me yet. I began to keep notes, scribbling down times, places, expressions. It felt strange, almost obsessive, but I needed to understand what was happening. One afternoon, a mutual friend pulled me aside. Her voice was hushed, her eyes darting nervously. "I shouldn't be telling you this," she said, "but I saw them. At the cafe near the square. They were arguing." He was furious, his face red, his hands clenched. She looked terrified, pale as a ghost. My stomach dropped. I wanted to ask more, but she shook her head, unwilling to be dragged deeper. That single confession was enough to confirm my worst fears. Something was happening between them, something they were desperate to keep hidden. The tension grew heavier with each passing day. Anonymous messages began appearing on my phone, short and unsettling. "Someone close is lying to you. Be careful who you trust. The truth will hurt." I stared at the words, my hands trembling, wondering who was sending them. Was it a warning from someone trying to protect me, or a cruel trick meant to break me? I couldn't ignore the signs anymore. My heart ached with suspicion, but I needed clarity. One evening I confronted her. We sat in my living room, the air thick with unspoken words. I looked her in the eye and asked, "What's going on between you and him?" She froze, her lips parted, but no words came. Seconds stretched into eternity. Her silence was louder than any confession. She hesitated too long, her eyes darting away, her hands twisting in her lap. Finally she whispered, "It's not what you think." But the tremor in her voice betrayed her. I pressed harder. "Then tell me what it is." She shook her head, tears threatening but never falling. "I can't." Her refusal cut deeper than any answer. My closest friend, the one I trusted most, was hiding something from me, and her silence confirmed the betrayal I had feared. The days that followed were filled with tension. I watched them both carefully, every interaction a clue, every silence a weapon. At a family dinner, I caught him glancing at her across the table, his jaw tight, his eyes sharp. She looked down instantly, her fork clattering against the plate. My relatives laughed at a joke, but I sat frozen, the moment etched into my mind. Another incident deepened my suspicion. I found her in the hallway, whispering into her phone. When she noticed me, she jumped, ending the call abruptly. "Just work," she said quickly, forcing a smile. But her face was pale, her hands trembling. I began to feel isolated, trapped between love and loyalty, between trust and betrayal. My fiancé's charm felt hollow, my friend's silence unbearable. I couldn't escape the feeling that they were both playing a role, hiding something I wasn't meant to see. One night, unable to sleep, I scrolled through the anonymous messages again. Each word felt heavier, more deliberate. "The truth will hurt. I wondered if the sender was someone inside my circle, someone who knew more than I did. The thought made me shiver. The betrayal grew sharper when I noticed how others began to act around me. A cousin avoided eye contact when I mentioned my fiancé. A colleague hesitated before congratulating me on the wedding. Whispers followed me, subtle but undeniable. It was as though everyone knew something I didn't. I tried once more to reach her. "Please," I begged, my voice breaking. "If you care about me, tell me the truth." She looked at me, her eyes filled with sorrow. "I'm trying to protect you," she whispered. The words should have comforted me, but instead they tore me apart. Protect me from what? Her refusal to explain left me drowning in suspicion. The silence between us became unbearable. I avoided her calls, she avoided my gaze. The friendship that had once been my anchor was now a storm pulling me under. And yet I couldn't let go. I needed answers. I needed to know what she was hiding, what he was keeping from me. The betrayal was no longer just a fear. It was a reality pressing against me, suffocating me. Her hesitation, her silence, her refusal to speak. It was louder than any confession. And I knew deep inside that the truth was waiting, ready to shatter everything I thought I knew. The silence between us had already become unbearable. But the moment undeniable proof surfaced, everything shifted. It wasn't suspicion anymore. It was fact staring me in the face. A folder left carelessly on his desk, receipts tucked between papers, photographs slipped into an envelope, and testimonies whispered by those who had seen too much. Each piece was a blade cutting through the lies I had been fed. I remember the weight of the evidence in my hands, the way my fingers trembled as I spread the documents across the table. My fiancé walked in, his usual confident stride faltering when he saw what I held. My friend followed moments later, her face pale, her eyes darting nervously. I didn't wait for explanations. I laid everything out in front of them, my voice steady, my heart pounding. "This is what you've hidden from me," I said, my gaze fixed on both of them. His charm collapsed instantly. The smile he always wore, the smooth words he always used, they vanished. He stammered, reaching for the papers, but I pulled them back. My friend's face drained of color, her lips parted as though she wanted to speak, but no words came. The confrontation was dramatic, but it wasn't loud. I didn't need to shout. The truth was louder than any voice. I watched them unravel, their silence betraying them more than any confession could. Small incidents added weight to their downfall. My family, once supportive of the wedding, began demanding answers. My aunt confronted him directly, her voice sharp. "How could you deceive her like this?" Friends who had once admired him refused to defend him, their loyalty shifting as whispers spread through the community. Even neighbors who had smiled politely before, now looked at him with suspicion. He tried to deny everything, his words tumbling out in desperation. "These are lies. She's twisting the truth." But the receipts bore his name, the photographs showed him with her, and the testimonies were too detailed to dismiss. My friend tried to explain, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I thought I was protecting you." But her excuses fell flat, drowned by the weight of betrayal. The empire of trust they had built around me became the very proof of their downfall. Every promise, every smile, every moment of silence was now evidence of deception. I felt anger rise inside me, but I didn't let it consume me. Instead, I stood tall, reclaiming my dignity with quiet strength. One incident stays etched in my memory. At a family gathering, my cousin confronted him in front of everyone. "You lied to her. You lied to all of us." The room fell silent, eyes turning toward him. He tried to laugh it off, but the sound was hollow, empty. My friend sat in the corner, her hands clenched, her face hidden. Another moment came when a colleague approached me privately. "I always wondered why she looked so uneasy around him," she said softly. "Now it makes sense." Her words carried no malice, only sorrow, but they added another layer to the betrayal. The whispers spread quickly. People I barely knew began to approach me, offering sympathy, sharing fragments of what they had seen. Each story was a thread, weaving together the truth I had already uncovered. My fiancé grew desperate. He called me late at night, his voice pleading. "We can fix this. Don't throw everything away." But his words no longer held power. My friend tried too, sending messages filled with apologies, promises, explanations. I read them once, then deleted them. The revenge wasn't in anger. It was in truth. I didn't need to scream, didn't need to lash out. I simply stood firm, letting the evidence speak for itself. Their downfall was their own creation and I was only the mirror reflecting it back at them. In the final confrontation I looked at them both, my voice calm. You betrayed me. You betrayed everything we built. And now you'll live with the consequences. They had no reply. He lowered his head, his hands shaking. She turned away, tears threatening but never falling. The silence was heavier than any words. I walked away not with loud celebration but with quiet strength. My dignity was intact, my heart scarred but steady. Revenge had been served, not through rage but through truth. In the days that followed I carried myself with calm resolve. I didn't seek pity, didn't crave attention. I simply lived, knowing closure had been found. My family stood by me, my friends offered support and the whispers eventually faded. One evening I stood in the garden, the same place where I had once wrestled with suspicion. The air was cool, the sky painted with fading light. I thought of the journey, the silence, the betrayal, the confrontation, and I felt peace. The truth had been painful but it had also freed me. I had reclaimed my dignity, my strength, my place. And those scars remained, they were reminders of resilience, not weakness. In the end I stood tall, knowing that revenge had been served through truth, and I walked away with closure.